what is the challenges that organizations faces when implementing high velocity IT practices?
You would first have to define what you mean by implementing, and I don't mean that as a clever response to your question, but implementing high velocity IT is, well, firstly, and this also applies to the other books, but certainly to high velocity IT, is that we did not want to come up with prescriptive guidance to tell
Great.
people what to do, but to give them options, give them ideas, give them examples, really to get people thinking about it. And I've been thinking about thinking recently quite a lot. It's the kind of things that old people tend to do. You don't do things anymore. You just think. You just think about things. And I was thinking about the concept of a question. And this sounds quite strange, but I'll get back to your question in the end. When you think about questions, you could say take a question. An answer is a sequel to a question. You ask a question, you get answers. And if you move on to answers, you could say that actions are sequels to answers. The interesting thing is, what is the prequel to questions? So where do questions come from? And I was thinking about this for a while, and I thought it's something to do with I think, with a combination of curiosity. If people are curious, and if you direct people's gaze to a certain area, make them aware of something, or share a different either share a different perspective on something familiar, or introduce something new, then you help people look at things, look at new things, or look at existing things in a different way. I think you mentioned ethics earlier on. I think that ethics is a good example. By drawing people's attention to the topic of ethics and suggesting, as Dave Snowden does in the piece, that like it or not, you are responsible for the actions, for the consequences of your actions. You you better think about the moral implications of that. And it gets people thinking about that. You know, what do we take the right decisions at work? Are we doing the right thing? So it's the idea with high velocity IT was to present a broad number of models and concepts and techniques, and certainly the techniques. We said I think we picked 22. I'm not sure, but about 20 techniques to illustrate the kind of things that high velocity IT organizations tend to do. Organizations that place high demands on IT, they tend to look at things like, we spoke about chat ops, we spoke about service design, we spoke about service experience, which of course is XLA. I was keen on getting XLA incorporated into ITIL 4, and it's mentioned not only in high velocity IT, but in fact in more depth in the drive stakeholder value module, which I think is probably the best of the five modules that we wrote. It's really good. Drive stakeholder value. It's about the relationship between the IT provider and the service recipient. So XLA is in there as well. And there's a bit about service experience in drive stakeholder value. And there are a couple of Axelos ITIL white papers on service experience available somewhere. I'm not quite sure where you can find them nowadays, but they are very much like what you'll find in the XLA guidance. So back to your question about implementing high velocity IT, and it also reminds me of a very good quote by William Gibson ages ago. He said, "The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed." By which he meant, I think, that you have within organizations, you have in certain parts of the organizations, people are more advanced in how they do things, their way of thinking, their way of working, way of being, maybe. And in other parts of the organizations, less so. So it's not as if everybody is doing everything in equal degree at the same time. It's very much a bit of this and a bit of that. And the idea behind High Velocity IT was to present people with various new perspectives, various new options, and to get them thinking. And there's another quote for you. The founder of the Toyota production system, Taiichi Ono, great quote by him was, "You have to face your own difficulties and think for yourself. Stop trying to borrow wisdom." And that last bit, trying to borrow wisdom, is something that we are tempted to do. Just get the High Velocity IT book, read what's in there, and blindly do that, instead of thinking for yourself what you should be doing in your particular circumstances. So implementing a High Velocity IT is really about about looking at the guidance, identifying things that seem promising, ethics, for instance, or adopting lean principles, adopting things like service dominant logic, and trying to work out how can we benefit from this concept in our particular organization. So it's and what I'd also say is it's about going back to those objectives, thinking first about what is our most important problem, what should we be what is our highest priority, because you should be working on that. That helps you focus on which things to do. Another thing to consider when you could say implementing High Velocity IT, but what you could also say in general is improving your organization, improving how you do things, improving the services. It's a question to ask yourself is whether you have the ability to break through whatever organizational culture and structure and even break through the industry bubble belief system that you're currently in. And if you're in the IT service management world, you'll have certain beliefs that are common within IT service management. If you have adopted DevOps, you'll have slightly differing beliefs, Agile, and so on. So you're stuck in a belief system. And these belief systems, your organizational culture, your structure, is constraining you to do things. And question you should ask yourself is, do you have the ability to break through those boundaries? And you've got to realize that people who aspire to enable change have varying degrees of influence. You could start as a director who has budgets, or even better, who can create budgets and direct managers to execute improvement initiatives. Then slightly lower, you have managers who don't create budgets but have budgets, have to live within budgets, and they can task consultants to design and realize improvements. Then the consultants advise the managers and they coordinate and execute the improvements. But then at a lower level, you've also got people, just regular workers, practitioners, professionals doing their job, and they have much less freedom to change the system, so they have to work within the system. But even working within the system, you can read High Velocity IT. You can come up with some ideas that you can implement within your little department or world or bubble, or what you like to call it. So you your degree of your ability to change is limited, but you can still change some stuff. And then you could also say you have a category of rebels or guerrillas who have other plans, and under corporate radar, they try and disrupt things, make little experiments with or without implicit managerial approval. Because sometimes managers very well know what's going on, that somebody's doing this illegal experiment, but they think it's a good idea, so they pretend they haven't seen it. And sometimes, really interesting things happen because passionate individuals do this little experiment, and if it turns out well, then other people start to copy it, and it really does. In fact, I wrote about this in one of my other books. It really boils down to people's desire to care about things. Just how much do you care about your co-workers, your customers, and so on. So it's about your desire to care, but also your ability to care, and that's both refers to the constraints that I just talked about. How much room do you have to change, and your personal ability to affect change. So I think that idea of thinking about and certainly as a consultant, when you go into organizations and you are, as a consultant, you have been tasked by a manager to do things. You've got to assess what is the capability of the organization, how much do they actually desire to change, and what is their ability to do so. And within those constraints, you have to work out what's the best advice you can give.